On this episode of the podcast, I have with me Harry Gestetner. He is founder and CEO at Orion, and we're going to be talking about going from one exit back into the startup world and trying to build another business. We're going to talk about the exit, learnings from the exit actually itself, and jumping into another startup and what was that inspiration. And, if you built one business, can you apply some of those learnings, and what do you apply to another business? And Harry, I appreciate your time. Thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Before we dive in, Orion, what do you guys do there?
We make 6 hours of sleep feel like 10. So Orion is a smart cover that goes over your mattress. It's got embedded sensors that track your sleep, and then very small water tubes embedded in the foam, so we can control the surface temperature, and that's your body temperature. So we track your sleep and keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, which should help you sleep better.
I think I would take going from 5 hours to 7, let alone from 6 to 10. So I might be a prime customer for maximizing your sleep. So awesome. All right, so we're going to dive into the topic. Obviously, you've had a successful exit, and before we go further, maybe that's actually a good jumping off point. Tell us a little bit about that previous startup and what you guys do there, and tell us a little bit about that exit itself.
Yeah, so I founded a company called Fanfix about 5 years ago. I was in college and essentially saw, this was end of 2020, and there was TikTok was massively on the rise, and saw this whole new generation of all these creators with all this distribution in their pockets as a result of TikTok, but really no way to make any money for the vast majority of them. And so wanted to build a platform to make that happen. So we built Fanfix about 5 years ago, and then exited about 3.5 years ago to Superordinary. Superordinary, probably the leading social commerce company in the US. I joined Superordinary as chief digital officer, stayed on running Fanfix as well, and left about a year ago.
Absolutely. I guess, having gone through that exit process itself, most founders want some kind of exit. That is the goal, unless you're one of those that can just build and accumulate and grow the thing. When you went through that exit process and the actual, the legal financial aspect, not the fun part where you get to pop champagne, tell us a little bit about what happened that you didn't expect at all. Obviously, first time through, I'm sure you got advice and you had somebody next to you, but there's still stuff that's going to come up that you're like, hey, that's never what people talk about when they talk about exits.
Well, I think with an exit, you got to think that there's no free lunch. So, you trade, your sort of ownership and control and freedom to, for cash. And I think a lot of, founders sort of almost, console other founders when there's an exit, and, it must be so hard, not having control of your company anymore or not making decisions. First it's amazing, an amazing feeling as a founder to kind of, not have to worry about burn anymore, not have to worry about raising more money. And, you kind of have all the stuff you don't like about your job just taken off your plate totally. Then I think as a founder, after a certain amount of time, you start to crave the sort of, creativity and freedom of and control of having your own startup again. So, I think that's sort of the path that most founders go on, but you really don't realize it, when you kind of have that first exit, because you're so excited to, have all the upsides of the exit without having to worry about any of the downsides of running a company.
Absolutely. Yeah. As you go through that exit, obviously you also spend some time at Superordinary, as the chief digital officer, and you want to start another business. Obviously you mentioned, most founders enjoy that journey, until they don't, and then they remember, oh, I really missed it, and they want to go back to it. As you're kind of going through that transition, you're working for somebody, you do launch Orion, obviously. When you, I guess, through that period of time where you are working for someone, you probably are noodling ideas. Probably, obviously, you were angel investing during that time as well. But as you're coming up with ideas, as you're examining ideas, does Orion just pop out at you? Are there other ideas that are competing at the time? Because you hear a lot of people get stuck at ideation and worry too much about their idea versus execution. But I was just curious, like the idea for Orion seems a little bit different than Fanfix in general.
Yeah, I think for me, it's, you can't control where ideas come from. They just come kind of from the ether, and it's not something people. Steve Jobs would go take a lot of drugs to try and get good ideas. There are people try and Mark Zuckerberg went to the monastery. Ideas are quite. There's not much known about kind of where they come from. I think once you have one, you sort of have this disqualification period where you try and find ways to disqualify it. Now, there are always a ton of reasons to disqualify an idea, but really the major ones, kind of just logically, is this viable or not? And then once you kind of come to a conclusion and have high conviction, that's when you go all in. And I think that the best ideas are ones that really start as something that sort of you want for yourself, or you and your friends kind of want for yourself. That's what happened with Orion, and so once you have conviction, you just gotta sort of tune out the noise and go all in.
I guess as you kickstarted Orion, you had some time since the same stage of Fanfix. Did you end up missing some of those early days? Did you go, you know what? Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're like, did I really have to go through this again? Because there's a lot of various other stress. I think there's stress in everything. So I don't people say, oh, I want less stress. I think it's just depending on what stress you're dealing with. But the stress of getting back into super early stage startup, was that just familiar? Was it like, hey, what am I doing? What was your thoughts at the time?
I think for me, it's what I was born to do. It's what I know. It's what I thoroughly enjoy. And when I'm not doing, it's all I want to be doing is building. So I didn't really think about it. It's just kind of a no-brainer. It's like breathing.
I like that. And you've gone through an exit. Are you starting Orion with that in mind, or is it a case of as a true entrepreneur, you start the business because you see a problem to solve, and the exit just happens to be a bonus to execution?
Yeah, I think a lot of founders kind of bullshit and hide away from the fact that at some point they'll want a liquidity event. I think we're pretty transparent. I think the goal of most businesses is a life-changing event for your employees and investors. If you can do that, then as a byproduct, you do well as a founder as well. So I think that's certainly the goal with this at the end of the day. But we're also kind of very mission driven and all obsessed with the product too.
I guess with Fanfix, a different space. You're now dealing with a physical product. Obviously, some of the same principles you learned around Fanfix, around the digital side, probably make the application to Orion just seamless. But then obviously you're dealing with the physical product. I guess that aspect of having to deal with an actual hardware piece, is that a challenge? Is that just another problem to solve, or how is your world different having a product this time?
Yeah, there's no. Every question, every startup is hard, but hardware is life on hard mode. That is as hard as it really kind of gets. Certainly much more difficult than software. I think I just kind of thought it was cool. It's fun to have a different challenge. Did a software startup. It was really good fun. I'm sure at some point we'll do more in the software world as well. Obviously, Orion has a big software component, but just thought it would be a fun challenge to do something I've never done before. Never before Orion, I'd never actually sold a physical product. So, it's a lot of fun, and it's definitely a challenge.
Are there any things that through the actual building phase of Fanfix that obviously it's slightly different businesses, but the execution, running a business, the founder experience, is there anything that you've been able to kind of carry forward that you could leverage, any pattern matching that seems pretty obvious?
Yeah, I think a huge amount. I think as a founder, you're sort of like an elastic band. The more you kind of get stretched, you never go back to your original form. I think you got to. I think learning compounds. I also think as a founder, you are typically unlocking. Your as your company progresses, you're doing things that you've never done before, and so it's kind of sink or swim. You got to figure it out, and I think the good founders are able to do that, and as I said, kind of the knowledge compounds, and there will always be challenges. It's just kind of whether you're able to figure it out and kind of stay calm under pressure.
What do you do? I guess you jump back into. Is there anything you do that helps alleviate the stress? I mean, obviously, as a founder, it's not like you could take 2-week vacations at certain stages whenever you want. But are there things that work for you when it comes to just being able to blow some steam off, just being able to decompress, like just to make sure that you're centered? Obviously, you might not, and you're like, hey, I'm just full floor, a foot to the pedal until the end, which obviously is a different way of going as well.
Yeah, I think you've got to. I mean, for me, I love hanging out with my friends. I live with my friends. I live between LA and San Francisco, and I have an apartment in LA with my friends, with 3 friends. I have an apartment in San Francisco with 2 friends, and I could live alone, but I think it's just it's kind of a nice thing, and it's kind of decompressing to come home to your best friends and just be able to kind of hang out with people your age and not be switched on at that point. I also love to, I think it's very important to kind of keep your exercise regime, like keep working out. I think that, people sometimes say, oh, I'm too busy to work out. Like, I think that's total BS. I walk a lot, try and get 10,000 steps a day. I think that's a great kind of decompression. And then I like to sauna and ice bath, and that's like the most relaxed I ever feel, kind of after doing that.
Absolutely. I guess if you were to have some kind of liquidity event here at Orion, and you mentioned you want to keep doing startups. I mean, that I love it. I guess like serial entrepreneurs do have that bug. Is there a future where you're like, you know what, I've done, I don't know, 5 of them. I either want to go into the VC world, because a lot of times that happens, or I just want to deal with execution without some of that initial, and maybe not. Maybe you go for the 6th startup. I guess looking at yourself and just the future, I mean, do you envision just being that serial entrepreneur one after another every couple of years?
Yeah, I think I definitely don't pretend to kind of know what the future holds. I think I didn't. If you asked me 5-10 years ago, like where I would be now, physically located, or in terms of what I was doing, I would have no idea. But I think it's just like I want to do what I want to be doing. I want to be doing what I want to do. And, at the moment, what I love to do is build startups. I think that's been my passion since a young age. I think it's very much a creative endeavor being a founder, and there's as much creativity as there is, kind of technical or financial or operating discipline. And so, I've yet to find anything that kind of matches that. But and it's like a sport. It's really fun. The competition is awesome. I think that's, at least for right now, what I want to be doing.
If you were to look at yourself, you mentioned obviously starting your business in college. Lots of people are. I mean, it's still happening. I think at a large volume, especially now with AI. People are diving to startups, even earlier. Is there any advice you have for people that might be super early in their career, founders, like, they're just through college or while they are finishing, their degree? Is there any advice that you wish you yourself knew?
I think you got to be all in. I think people tend to kind of want to stick their hands in different pies and sort of hedge their bets a bit. Spread themselves around. You got to be all in. You got to pick one idea and just go for it, and only do that for a long period of time until you make it successful.
I actually think burning the bridge, burning the boats behind you is. I believe in that if you're going to do something. I guess with that said, when you did start Fanfix, I mean, you caught an interesting opportunity even with Orion. Some founders go, I believe in product market fit and pivoting. I think, then there's a notion of pivoting really isn't a thing. Either your idea works and you just haven't figured out how to solve it, or the core thesis doesn't work. I guess maybe a good final question, when you think about yourself and startups, do you view pivoting as just part of the process, or if you're pivoting, there might be an underlying issue with the problem you're trying to solve?
I think we always said the only way for sure that something is wrong is an idea is wrong is if it's something you have at the start. Typically you're wrong about a lot. You're wrong about a lot at the start. That doesn't mean that the kind of entire product is flawed. I think it depends on the company. Typically the way to do it is, you find sort of a problem that you have, a problem that, your friends also have. And then, hopefully there are enough others like you and your friends to kind of have a big market and create a huge business. Those are the kind of best types of ideas in my opinion. That's what we're doing with Orion here. I think software is a lot easier to pivot. You can kind of have an idea, it doesn't really work, and you can very quickly kind of spin something else up. Hardware is a lot more difficult. You got 18-month product cycles. You got kind of inventory, supply chain, manufacturing. And so I think with hardware, you got to make sure you have a lot more conviction. And, when you dive into something, you gotta know that it's going to work.
Love it. Fantastic advice, Harry. Appreciate you sharing with us and your experience and journey, through one exit and obviously back into another startup. If somebody does have a follow-up question, I know a decent amount of founders listen to the pod and maybe they're wanting to pick your brain on something. Is there a good way of connecting? Is there a good way of asking you a follow-up?
LinkedIn's pretty good. Just my name, Harry Gestetner. Find me on LinkedIn.
Okay, fantastic. Again, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man.
Absolutely. All right, that's it for this episode. Be back again. Different guest, different topic. Until then, two things. One, if you know a founder or someone who wants to be a founder, this is a great episode. Harry gave us insights into his experience going through a liquidity event, actually spending some time outside the startup world, and then wanting to jump back in, and some of his reasons in doing so. Also, adding that hardware complexity, which obviously he talked us through as well. So I'd appreciate if you could share this episode. Also, like, subscribe, comment. Let me know how the show's going for you. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.